I mean, the trousers are supposed to be quite baggy, right?
Yes, baggy. No, they baggy. Hello, welcome to Geeks and Gaijins. I'm the Gaijin John.
I'm the Geek Tom.
And welcome to the podcast where we bring all the Japan to you.
Or, at least a moderately sized, healthy portion of Japan. We don't want to overfeed you on Japan.
Doesn't matter where you are, depending on whether postage is available. / internet connection. If you really want to and willing to pay the fees, we will send a USB to you in the mail. The cost is also several £1,000s. I mean, it's free, but also do not try and take us up on that offer. Don't do that. I did not think it through.
All deliveries are non-returnable and non-refundable.
Woo! What a week in Japan. I should probably address the elephant in the room. The coronavirus-shaped elephant in the room. Japan's not doing good, guys.
I hear you've had a small smidgen of an outbreak over your side there, John.
Yeah, so currently Japan is getting more cases per day than the UK.
So I was surprised to hear. I guess most Japan's been very decisive on its measures, which is hardly any at all.
Abe-sama solved it. I'm really not sure how it's coming back right now. It's almost as if it was here all along, and they just started testing more.
Oh, I didn't realize it was that bad. Oh, no.
Welcome to the world of Chrono Trigger virus. It just turns everything into a 18-bit game. I don't think things can be 18-bit. It's 16-bit, but it's 2 better.
just a few extra pixels floating around there, just for a good measure.
Yeah, so now I'm gonna... So now, that's the last mention of any of that stuff. So now we're gonna do a fun podcast. Whilst I hold back the tears. Mostly because it's just too goddamn hot.
Stay inside, kids. It's not good to be outside right now. 32
degrees outside at 80% humidity today. Not okay. Sorry, this is what this podcast has just become, of me updating you on the weather.
If you signed up for two British men having a conversation and not expecting 50% of it to be about the weather, I don't know what to tell you.
When I was talking to the Japanese teachers that I work with, and I was like testing out my Japanese that I was learning, they're like, "Oh, you're learning a lot about the weather." Like, yeah, it's my default thing to talk about. Like, it's the easiest thing to randomly talk to people about. I'm British, I'm used to this. And they're like, "Oh, British people do like to talk about the weather." Yes, because it's the one thing that has like any kind of sustained like inevitability in our life. The rain. There was always the rain. Thomas, what are we doing today on the podcast before I can derail something that hasn't even started?
Well, we have a variety of water-based themes and topics to discuss, including Japanese bathhouse culture, some typhoons, and myself having finally watched a Miyazaki film for once in my life. We'll also be discussing that little adventure, but I believe we have perhaps one more topic before that.
Well, we also have snack break as well, which I'm fliggling around in front of my face.
That's implied. The snack break is, as we all know, inevitable.
I'm going to, once again, just steamroll over this entire podcast to talk about video games. Woo!
One of us has to do it every podcast.
Yeah, so this is once again Ghost of Tsushima. It's a good game. It's Red Dead Redemption Samurai Edition. So what can you do? It's a good game. But it's got some really interesting comments recently, because lots of Western people tend to like to denounce games made by Western developers about like the East and about like fetishizing the East a lot. But this is the other way around. So basically, the Japanese developer in charge of the Yakuza series, a man by the name of Toshihiro Nagoshi. If you don't know the Yakuza games, they're Japanese Grand Theft Auto with more dancing.
And karaoke. Don't forget the karaoke, John. The songs are the best part.
It really is. And I like the Yakuza games a lot. But he's been playing Ghost of Tsushima, and he did a short interview and some things. And this is from a translation by Jules Shockers. We'll link this in the description. That it was interesting because, especially like Ghost of Tsushima is kind of showing that a lot of people's preconceptions about Japan is wrong, which is cool. He says, "We definitely lost to them. I think it's a game that definitely should have been made by Japanese people, but I heard they did a monstrous job collecting data and everything." We'll get to that. And even he talks about the Kurosawa mode, a mode where it plays in Japanese in black and white. And he says it's the kind of work made by non-Japanese people that makes you feel they're even more Japanese than us.
Never underestimate power of weebs.
That's pretty much it. So most notably the Japanese dub and just the character design itself. He noted that it doesn't look like the main character doesn't look particularly cool at first glance. He's like just grizzled dad energy. Well, grizzled mid-aged man kind of energy.
Do you mean AAA game energy? Because it has to be
yes,
a dad these days.
But he's not a dad. But the thing in Japan is like that is weird. Toshihiro says that I'm sure in any other company, if the designers showed up with his artwork, it would have been rejected.
I mean, yeah, he's not a high schooler.
Yeah. So he's just this old-looking guy.
He's what, 30, 40?
From looking at the history behind it, because you can look at Japanese history for Gaijins, but I am working on a proper thing on Ghost of Tsushima. Well, basically is that he's probably based on a real person from history who's about 18 or so. But I think it's implied that he is in his mid to late 20s. But he doesn't look like that. He looks like in his early 30s.
He looks like he's been through some stuff, which he definitely has. But, like, late 20s, he's not that old.
But no, it was just him saying well done to everyone at Sucker Punch.
Yeah. It's been a bit of a confusing discussion, but I understand the concept of not wanting to just steal random aspects of people's culture and just sort of twist it into some weird, fictitious thing. And we've had a lot of, do have a lot of history of that in our fiction, but I think the difference is that it's okay to do that as long as you're willing to put in the work and do it properly and respectfully. It's not that you just can't take aspects of other cultures and put them into your work. That's actually really good to do. It helps diversify our arts. But, you know, if you do it poorly, then no one's going to like it.
They sent many people to Tsushima itself to help them work on designing it, on designing the in-game world, but also for the Japanese voiceovers. Of course, the Japanese VO for it are all native Japanese speakers, but they actually had a dialogue coach to help them speak ancient Japanese correctly.
Yeah, they put in a lot of work to make sure this was like properly authentic to the world they're creating, which is it's really impressive. Just how dedicated and passionate they were about making this feel authentically Japanese.
And I will be the first to say, "Oh, historical accuracy, etc., etc." I am a history graduate. This is one of the things that I love to talk about. Totally accurate history does not make a fun video game. It doesn't. It really doesn't. And these are, as anything, a piece of media that you can enjoy. It feels a bit more like an adaptation of a samurai movie, like especially a Japanese samurai movie, than it does a recreation of 13th century Japan. But in that one,
that is exactly what they're going for, though, is it not?
Yeah, exactly.
Especially with the Kurosawa mode. It's like,
yeah, because if you did an accurate representation of 13th century Japan, you'd be a farmer and then you'd die of some disease. It's not fun.
Yeah. Whilst there's overlap, there is a difference between authenticity, believability, and realism. And authenticity and believability are actually more important to your story.
They do address, like, some of the historical events are mixed up, and I will talk about that at another time. Because some of them is interesting, because very famously, they do take inspiration from some events. So at the end, like the final mission, where you're finally killing all the Mongols and defeating head Mongol in boss fight du jour, the Bowser Mongol, if you will.
Nice.
And at that point, a storm rises up to trap the fleet in a certain bay. This is, of course, a reference to the storm that supposedly broke the Mongol ships when they attacked mainland Japan during that invasion, and the one that happens during the Mongol invasion of Japan several years later, and the famous kamikaze, or the Divine Wind, which is where that term comes from. So they did a really good job of like, well, these are events in real life. We obviously can't have our protagonist just go to the mainland and do some stuff there. It's like we kind of need to keep it on the world that we've spent a huge amount of time making. However, speaking of divine winds and typhoons, I thought we would look a little bit more at those today, Thomas.
Why exactly are we looking at divine winds and typhoons today, John?
Because Japan has just had the first July since records began in 1951 of a totally typhoon-free July.
Oh, we're back on the weather, ladies and gentlemen. We got you.
Weather. No, this is actually interesting. So, a hurricane is a tropical cyclone that occurs in the Atlantic Ocean and northeastern Pacific Ocean, and a typhoon occurs in the northwestern Pacific Ocean. So you can also hear the terms tropical storms, tropical depressions, which is just me when I go into that hot weather right now.
All
But yeah,
big, whirly, windy boys.
Indeed. So big, whirly, windy boys. None of the windy boys got whirly or big enough to become a proper typhoon this July, which is insane. So usual typhoon season in Japan goes from about May to December. So last year we had above average. We have 29 named storms, so they give them names. Then out of those, 17 were classed as typhoons and 4 were classed as super typhoons.
But not so much this year.
No, well, not so far. The main ones you tend to get in August and September, but it's the fact that we haven't had any at all yet. There's been like some tropical depressions or tropical storms, but nothing's been happening yet.
I mean, it's been a rough year for everyone, quite frankly. It's okay if they just take their time with it. No one's rushing them. It's all right if they're not feeling up to being full super cyclones this year.
I was looking at it and thinking, like, so who names the typhoons? Or in Japanese, the word typhoon is taifu.
Seems simple enough.
Basically, the things that happens if you live through a typhoon, which you probably will do if you live in Japan.
Most people do.
Yeah, it's just strong winds of around up to 200 kilometers an hour and a rise of sea levels and lots of rain, basically. And you get about 7 or 8 pass over Okinawa and about 3 maybe directly hit the Japanese main islands, especially Kyushu, which is the southernmost, and Shikoku. But so most typhoons hit Japan between May and October, and August and September is the peak season where they get like more horrible and bigger and nastier.
So do you think it's going to be just like continue to be weaker cyclones for the last couple of months, or do you think it's all going to accumulate into one giant mega cyclone?
I, Thomas, have no idea because I'm not a meteorologist.
I'm not a weathertician.
We had some typhoons when I came to Japan last year, and we also had some really nasty ones, including Typhoon Hagibis, which was the famous one that caused cancelling of some rugby matches and almost 100 people's death.
Yeah, we reported on that at the time.
So the thing is, they do name them. However, in Japanese, they don't really care about names. They just give them numbers.
That's easy enough, I guess.
Eastern Typhoon 1, Western Typhoon 2. So, example, Typhoon Hagibis, the Japanese give it that name so it's for like international reasons, because like international people, we got to give it a name. We can't just call it Typhoon number 2. It's like, that's what you get. So in Japanese, Typhoon Hagibis was Reiwa Ganen Higashi Nihon Taifu, which is Reiwa 1, which was the year 2019. Is Reiwa 1 in the Japanese character. Higashi is East. Nihon is Japan. Ganen is what you're using for 1 there.
It sounded really fancy until you broke it down to 2018 East Hurricane 1.
Yeah, pretty much. They have like a big like set of names because I looked up how to find these names. Well, I don't know. Why aren't they just like, this one's Hurricane Doraemon and this one's Hurricane Winnie the Pooh?
I feel like that's bad for branding. I feel like they might get sued for that one.
What if you name them after the villains? Who is the villain of Winnie the Pooh? It is Winnie the Pooh himself.
Okay, no bother.
No bother. The Japan Meteorological Agency's Typhoon Center assigns them names on behalf of the World Meteorological Agency, and they have 35 names from an international list of 140 names that are supplied by 14 countries. there's some particular bad ones. They retire it, so the name Hagibis has been retired because it was so damaging.
Do we know where we got the word name Hagibis from? Because it sounds like some sort of Scottish monster.
Filipino word that means velocity or swiftness.
Nice.
There's also apparently a Filipino disco group.
Nice.
They were cited as the first major boy band in the Philippines and coined the title the Village People of the Philippines.
Well, congratulations, Philippines. You got yourself a boy band. Good job.
They started in 1979. They broke up in 1997, but they reformed in 2013.
Now I understand why they might be called the Village People. That might have been a more accurate description back when they first formed.
Yeah. But anyway, that's a little info about the history of Typhoons. Typhoons, they're spinny boys. Don't sit in the middle of them.
Wait, isn't the eye that hurricane supposed to be safest, John?
If you are worrying about typhoons, don't worry. The scientists behind the weather, I don't want to say meteorological again, they can actually predict the route of these things like really easily. So you get to know what date, what time they're coming, what area they're going to affect. So if there are any problems, you will be advised by your local prefecture, etc. So if you are moving to Japan, everything will be fine. It's not like an earthquake or something. You get a lot of warning for a typhoon coming.
Had any earthquakes lately, John?
There was one in Tokyo. There's been a couple in Tokyo. There might have been one recently, but I think I slept through it.
That's the spirit. We got to keep that sleeping through earthquake streak going.
And speaking of things I want to sleep through, we have this week's snack break.
What have you done to yourself this week, John?
Well, I was wandering through the supermarket as I do, and I was looking for some chocolate because I was like, oh, I'd like some chocolate. I ended up getting different snacks instead, but I found this. And I feel like you need to see it to believe it. You can always find this on the Gaijin John Instagram when I do eventually upload it. But for now, Thomas, you will be the only one to see the joy of cheese-flavored chocolate.
Oh my. Oh my goodness. Oh, that is fantastic.
Cheese and chocolate together at last.
Let me read all that fancy Japanese text.
On the outside, we have the picture of two different kinds of cheese. And it says in English, cheese and cheese, cheddar and parmesan. And under it in Japanese, it says cheddar and parmesan. Crunky crunch chocolate.
It's called Crunky Crunch Chocolate. What the heck? What did you find?
I don't know. Cheese flavor. It looks to be white chocolate or just cheese chocolate. Japan likes to flavor white chocolate. I believe it's flavored this one with cheddar and parmesan. I'm just hoping the crunchy parts aren't like bits of cheese. I hope it's like biscuit or something.
Oh, just little shots of parmesan in there.
I'm really worried.
Oh, this is exciting. Oh, I love this. Good. He looks like he's dreading this.
I bought this for myself.
You should know better by now.
Yeah, all right. I'm opening it. I am being greeted by a small cartoon character on the inside of this chocolate wrapper. There's an entire children's manga on the inside of this.
Oh my god, that's fantastic.
Look at it. Okay, I'm slightly worried by that smell. Okay, so it's all covered in silver foil. That's the crunkle you can hear.
That's the crunk.
Okay, yeah, I've got a piece.
What is
Oh, that smells wrong.
Oh no.
It smells like the sweetness of like a cheesecake, but like really fatty, like chocolate.
Oh.
Oh god, that smells foul.
Eat the cheese chocolate, John.
It does seem the crunchy bits do seem to be biscuits. So this is cheddar and parmesan chocolate.
Eat the chocolate, John.
Itadakimasu. Who? Who my?
I'm seeing bemused with slight hints of suffering.
It's not immediately terrible, and that makes it even scarier.
Ooh, yes.
Best way I can describe it is imagine the artificial like cheese flavor you get on like crisps. Like not
Yeah.
cheese and onion crisps, but like just cheese.
Yes.
And then someone's just added loads of sugar to that. So it tastes like someone has tried to make a chocolate bar out of cheesecake. But
That doesn't sound bad.
but to try and keep the cheese flavor, it's just kind of
That does
this
sound
feels
worse.
like it'd be a nice bar of white chocolate. But
Ah.
yeah, the crunch has a crunchy, like biscuity bit throughout it. It's weird. The more I eat it, the more I like it. This feels like a savory chocolate. This is very strange.
This is fascinating.
Like, I don't feel like I'm eating chocolate. I feel like I'm eating some kind of solid form of like cream cheese.
That's less appetizing. That's
That's exactly what it feels like. It feels like I'm just eating sweet shards of cream cheese.
That doesn't seem like something that has parmesan in it should taste like that. That seems off.
But it does have that kind of off taste. It has that kind of off cheesy taste and smell.
Do the Japanese know what parmesan is?
Yes. They love Italian food.
Oh, that is true. You have mentioned that before.
So that is cheese and cheese crunky chocolate.
This is fascinating for me. I do live by the life philosophy that if it can't be improved with either cheese, chocolate, or ketchup, 3 C's, don't think about it too hard. That's it's not worth eating. I never considered perhaps combining two of those together. Certainly not chocolate and cheese. But now that I know it has potential, I'm even more interested.
The thing is, it does somehow work, and that makes it somehow worse. But that's just Japan. Japan loves to flavor white chocolate, and they added cheese. Oh,
Japan will try anything once.
The aftertaste is not good.
There it is.
The aftertaste feels like I've just been eating parmesan shavings. No,
it's the
no,
parmesan. That's the hit. Oh, yes.
Oh, God.
Do you have a drink of something, Sean?
I need to go get one.
Go get one.
Okay, I have my cold green tea now. I'm fine.
I think that might be the first snack break that's ever required you to retreat back into the kitchen for something else afterwards.
Pretty much. I think maybe the dried squid at the very beginning.
Oh, yeah.
But that was just foul.
I'm assuming you either finished that off or threw it out. I can't remember which.
Sorry, I'm trying to read. Yeah, so there's like a little children's manga inside this. I don't want to upload it because this is obviously just someone's art about a small child with a cowboy hat who makes chocolate. And this one attempts to ride a cow.
Excuse me, the Milky Bar Kid?
Yeah, it's pretty much that, but the Milky Bar Kid is some kind of bear, maybe?
I mean, Milky Bar Kid is strong and tough.
And only the best is good enough. And that best somehow involves cheddar and parmesan.
They are the best.
Do you know what I need after that, Thomas?
I don't know what you need after that, John. I don't. Apparently, it's some herbal green tea or something.
A long, relaxing bath.
But where would you go to get a bath in Japan, John?
Well, I'd go to my bathroom, because it contains a bath. But secondly, Japan has a history of bathing culture and begun eons ago. Now, welcome, children, to this edition of Story Time. No, we're not. We're not. That's not a section. We're not doing that. That's a silly thing. So, this is Japanese bathing culture. This section was inspired by the JapanToday.com article about a man's plan to attempt to rescue Japanese bathhouse culture because, yes, you might not know about it, but it is in need of rescuing.
Apparently, it's kind of a big deal.
So we are going to tell you the hows, the whos, the whys, and the wherefores of Japanese bathing. Two kind of things. You have one which is a sento and one which is an onsen. These are two very common terms that tend to get confused, sometimes with the Japanese themselves, because the Kansai region has to be weird. God damn you, Kansai region. So sento is just a kind of Japanese communal bathhouse where you pay a fee to come in. This is mostly from the idea when lots of houses in Japan weren't big enough to have their own baths. And then there was kind of like a social and communal like part to it. You go to the bathhouse. And yes, before you ask, yes, this is all naked. Everything is happening is naked.
That's how you wash yourself.
I don't know about you. I'm English. I bathe myself in a 3-piece suit every day. My dry cleaning costs are outrageous.
You joke, but...
So the other kind of public bath in Japanese is an onsen. A sento can be anywhere. A sento can be in the middle of stuff, and you can have an onsen in a sento. Because an onsen uses hot water from a natural hot spring. It is literally using hot water from the earth to fill like a bath.
Yeah, you could just build a bathhouse around a hot spring, and you have both a sento and an onsen. Boom.
Exactly. So many people, when they say they go to a Japanese bathhouse, they either go to an onsen or a sento, which is just a big place you can bathe yourself. Or if you're being that guy, oh, I'm going to go to a traditional Japanese bathhouse, those are most likely going to be onsens. But what do you do? What do you do when you go to an onsen or a sento for that matter?
I'm going to guess it includes some form of washing.
Yes, but not in the bath, Thomas, you filthy, filthy man.
Huh?
The point of bathing in Japan is to get clean, but that's not really the point of a sento or an onsen. It's the kind of point is to soak in a hot bath and like relax. It's almost kind of not a form of meditation, but it's a form of like socialization, relaxation.
Because everyone just hops in the tub together.
Exactly. You don't want to get that water dirty, Thomas. You don't want to make everyone else's bath water dirty.
That would be unfortunate, yes.
So what you have to do first before you get in the bath is shower.
Okay, fair enough.
So usually, let's do, you go in, because I've been to both a sento and an onsen in different ways. So first of all, when you come in a sento, you'll have to pay. Usually some hotels might have their own onsen or sento. And so you'll have set times usually that different people are allowed to go in. But usually you'll have a women's area and a men's area. People don't get knackered together. No, stop.
I mean, they get knackered with members of their own, assigned gender.
You literally have two kanji. Usually the kanji for men is in blue and the kanji for women is in pink.
Pretty standard stuff.
Some of them will now have the semi-universal icon of the men and the man in a dress. Because I can't assume that's a woman, can you? The men's kanji, this is a quick tip for you. A man's kanji is a rice field. So it's literally a little square on top of like a platform. And then the woman's one has like a hole in the middle, 2 lines and a hat on to make like a weird circle. Usually if you just ask as well, they'll point you.
Yeah, which way do I go? This giant curtain or that giant curtain?
Go where they don't scream when you go in.
I've seen enough anime to know that's not how this works, John. You always have to go in the wrong door first.
God damn it. God damn it,
Because
Thomas.
that's how things work.
Well, first of all, you need a towel. Most places will provide you with a towel, though, if you've somehow lost yours, which is not very good hitchhiker etiquette, I will say.
Very useful things, towels.
So usually you have a small towel that you bring into the bathtub with you that usually like you plop on your head, and that is to like wipe, because these things are hot. These things are really, really hot. That's kind of the point. So usually people use them to wipe sweat from their brows and stuff. And if you have like long hair, you might want to tie it back. Once you go into the changing room, take off all your clothes, get as naked as the day you were born, pop in, and there's usually an area where you just shower. And these are a little weird because in Japan, you shower sitting down. Well, in many of these places you do. So you got a little stool that you sit on naked with a shower head like at your eye level that you take off, and then you just spray yourself down.
All right. I mean, it seems not completely impractical. I don't know why they haven't got standing ones, but it's not a big deal.
No, so you just sit there. You sit there washing, and then you have to wash off your seat and stuff afterwards. And then,
Obviously, that's just good etiquette.
yep, and then you can go into the big bath.
Ooh.
So onsens, some of them are inside, and you just slowly go in and you just sit and relax. The same with a sento, because unless you're in there by yourself, I wouldn't recommend trying to change how hot the water and stuff is. Because in lots of sentos and things, people like you can change the water. But if you're in there with a bunch of Japanese people, don't go change the water temperature.
They'll look at you judgingly.
Yeah, they won't say anything. They'll be lovely. They'll be giving you evils behind your back.
They might go up and get a different setup and leave you alone in the cold tub.
Yeah. So the whole point is that they are really hot, and because of that, there's usually a recommendation that you don't spend more than 20 minutes at a time in them. Then maybe you have a 10-minute break out and then 20 minutes back in. Because these things are hot. Like, so hot, in fact, that it's recommended that, one, if you have been drinking or you are drunk, do not go in an onsen at all. Because basically it's a serious problem that the heat basically causes your body to absorb alcohol quicker, and it drops your blood pressure and just can cause really horrible stuff.
Oh, that would be unfortunate.
Yeah. And also, if you got tattoos, sorry, Japan no likey tattoos. Japan no likey tattoos at all. Because
what?
they are.
Why don't they like tattoos, John?
Because they are associated with the Yakuza, including the, well, not the video games, the actual, like, Japanese mafia.
Yeah, the dangerous ones.
Yeah. More and more Japanese people do have tattoos now, so it's like, usually if you're searching for a specific onsen, you can see if they allow tattoos or not. If they're really small, maybe cover them up with like a plaster or something, or like a small bandage, and you'll be fine. But if you've like got big forearm ones or stuff, you're best off trying to find a bathhouse that will accept you. Some places, some hotels or guest houses do private onsens, so you'll be able to just go by yourself. But most of them are shared.
I mean, that's the whole point of it, isn't it? It's become an aspect of the community, hasn't it?
Yeah. Another important thing about the onsens is they're supposed to have lots of minerals and stuff in them. So you're supposed to try and absorb the minerals from it. So some people don't rinse off after onsens, but you do after sentos. Depends whether you want to be clean or not.
I mean, what's the point of going to a public bath if you're not going to get clean in the end of the day, John?
I don't really know. Well, apparently now, this is from our original article about a Japanese man's plan to save bathhouse culture, that he's attempting to get people in there. And how he's doing it is kind of interesting.
Because I suppose even before we had lockdown measures, more and more people in Japan were starting to have baths at their own home.
Yeah.
Because it was just more efficient for them.
Like, I live in a tiny one-bedroom apartment in the middle of nowhere, and I have a bath.
Yeah. But now, because it's a bad idea to start sharing spaces with other people, just in case, and it's probably a really bad idea to wear a mask into basically a sauna, they've decided that, well, lots of people just have stopped showing up to public bathhouses. But they're still running at the same costs of keeping all the heating going and everything, but they're just getting fewer people coming in. So it's going pretty poorly for them at the moment.
This man, also known as Shimbo, is among a new generation of owners who's trying to do things like adding co-working spaces, beer taps, comedy shows, live music, yoga classes. There's another one in Tokyo that has a model railway and a dozen cats.
Everyone's got a gimmick these days.
It seems like a combined public bath and cat cafe. That seems interesting.
I don't know how the cats respond to that, but I mean, if
No.
it works, it works. Whatever you got to do, respect the hustle.
That is the world of Japanese bathhouses. And it is a great experience to do when you're in Japan. Even if you go to what they are called the big super sentos, which are like the big public ones that even now have like almost like restaurants and other things attached. Not while you're naked, but they have like jacuzzis and steam baths and saunas, etc. So they become more like an actual, like almost, it's not a swimming pool, by the way, guys. You don't do 30 lengths in the bath.
That's what I mean. The Onsen, they're not deep enough for this.
Some of them do get pretty deep, but don't do that. Don't do that at all.
Again, the Japanese will look at you funny.
Indeed.
Well, speaking of bathhouses, I have recently watched a movie with my family that heavily features bathhouses, although not quite in the same capacity as
Ooh.
real life. Because, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, I have been running this podcast for almost, well, co-running this podcast for almost a year and has at this point not watched Spirited Away. Shock, horror.
Or as it's known in Japanese, Sento Chihiro Kamikakushi. Sorry, I have to keep my weeb cred.
And what does that translate directly into, John? Because I recognize the first two words.
Sen and Chihiro are spirited away. Kamikakushi just means spirited away.
Very nice. Well, I mean, that makes sense because the main character, Chihiro's name, does turn into Sen, which now has more relevant meaning to me now that we've had this conversation. And Sento. So
yeah.
It's an appropriate name. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. I recently rectified this issue on this week with my family, as we usually have a family movie night, and I got the choice to watch on the movies. Now, unlike me, the rest of my family have not been exposed to the madness that is most of Japanese media, and I think we intend to keep it that way mostly. My little brother has read some manga at some point, and that's probably the extent of it. To the extent that when we started up the movie, my mum, God bless her heart, was like, "So what is this called exactly? Is this a manga?" And we were like, well, I kept silent. I didn't want to get into the whole thing about this, but my little brother, who'd actually read manga, was like, "No, it's just an animation. Don't worry about it, Mum." Covering for me. Very nice. Well, the thing is, the criteria we have for selecting movies for our family movie night is we have a list of 100 movies we must see, which has a bunch of really good movies on it. But the only like anime one is Spirited Away. I believe there's like Seven Samurai on there as well, but there's really not that many other Japanese movies.
It won the Oscar for Best Animated Movie in 2002, only a year after Best Animated Movie was introduced. Do you want to know what won it in 2001, the year before?
Toy Story.
Shrek.
Oh, yeah.
Toy Story was in 1997. Best Animated wasn't a thing when Toy Story came on. Yeah.
My goodness.
It's the only non-English film to win Best Animated Feature.
Which is, as we've said before, kind of shocking.
Kind of dumb.
Animated movies Japan churns out every year. Like, they do a lot of good stuff.
The 3 things nominated for 2006 were Happy Feet, Cars, and Monster House. And Happy Feet won.
I don't think there's a hill I can die on in that argument. there's no winners there. Anyway, yes, we've already discussed how dumb the animated category in the Oscars is.
So for those sitting at home who have not seen it, it's essentially the story of a girl called Chihiro. She and her parents are moving to a new town, and on the way they stop off somewhere, and basically her parents disappear, aka are kidnapped, aka get turned into pigs. And so it's basically the story of her going to like a spirit world essentially to try and get them back. I haven't properly sat through all of it. It's one of those ones that I think I accidentally watched like when I was quite young on the television. Then I was like, oh, that was good. Wonder what that was. Don't know.
Yeah, that was pretty much most of my experience with Japanese anime for like 20 years. I was like, I don't know what this is, but it's neat. So yes, now 19 years after it's released, I am here to gush about Spirited Away because apparently that's still a thing that's possible. I'm sure I'm not going to add anything new to the conversation at this point, but I mean, might as
So
well.
please, and I don't want to say the sentence again, gush away.
So we had an interesting time. We were streaming it on Netflix, which meant that the streaming quality kind of varied. It would the just based on our internet, sometimes it'd be kind of blurry, which is unfortunate. And also because it was on Netflix, the default language was the English dub, which I'm sure is already going to have some people's hairs raised. We did not change this. We watched the whole movie in the English dub, and to be fair, it was all right, I guess. I mean, it worked well enough for my family.
Most Studio Ghibli's English dubs are pretty decent. They're no ones are just bad. Like
Yeah,
they tend to have pretty decent actors doing them. So
I think the actors were all fine. I think there might have been a little bit of work could have done on the actual voice direction because some of the lines were a little stilted and stiff. The main point of contention for my family was actually the voice actor Chihiro, who was like 11 when she
yeah,
voiced it. So, I mean, the positive of that was that it was a very convincing performance for a child character. It definitely sounded like we were listening to a child rather than like a 20-year-old doing a high pitched voice. But I think this ends up going in line with what you commented on I think it was My Neighbor Totoro or something, which is that sometimes they'll just say some really rapid things, like especially when she was shouting, which was like the big contentious point for my family, was they found her shouting very annoying. It was very rapid and screechy, trying to match up with the original movie's pacing. I think the saving grace was actually Spirited Away is not very dialogue heavy. Be scenes where there's characters having conversations and they'll be interspersed by long pauses of not really needing to talk, which is fascinating, actually. I really enjoyed that aspect of the movie where they do such a good job with the visual storytelling and the animation that there's not really much needed for dialogue in most scenes. You could probably do like a proper silent movie version of it, like Fantasia style, just with music, and you'd still probably get most of the experience, I think, because they do fantastic jobs. The detail is obviously something that's very popping out. The backgrounds are very vivid and lovely, and especially the character animation, all the little tweaks and twitches that they give the characters to really sell their characterization is mwah, chef's kiss. It was a delight to watch in that capacity. The story itself did not go massively well with the family. Well, some members. There was a bit of a divide because it is strange in that you could easily divide it into like three sort of semi-related but disparate stories,
yeah.
basically following pretty traditional three-act structure. The first act is about her getting used to the world and figuring out what's going on and finding a place in it. The second is where most of the tension in the story comes with No Face's rampage through the onsen. And then you have this extra bit. Well, the third act is all about going to a witch's house and resolving all the major problems with the story. So it's all wrapped up neatly. I can see why this made such big waves when it was released, because even today, it's a beautiful film. It's aged fantastically.
It is essentially voted as one of the best films of all time. Would you say you agree with that? It's the most successful film in Japanese history, grossing over $352 million worldwide, and it overtook Titanic at the Japanese box office and is the highest grossing film in Japanese history.
Dang, well, I can see it. It's definitely a worthy contender for that. I would have to watch it again in the Japanese version because there is definitely some sticking points I have with the version I watched because I'm not entirely convinced on all the storytelling. Like I said, I'd love to see a version of this without any dialogue, but because there's so little dialogue, they seem to balance it out by making all of it very blunt and direct and very opaque. Like it just felt a little unnatural in the English dub. That's something that's a problem I usually have with English dubs of Japanese media, is that it seems like it's dumbed down a bit. Technically, everything there is fantastic. I think it's a fantastic movie. I just wasn't as drawn into the story itself, and maybe that was with how it was presented to me.
Yeah, it's a lot of the things with Japanese versions of it. It's quite difficult because an awful lot of Japanese media works on puns and plays on different interpretations of Japanese words.
Yeah,
Lots of people compare this to like Alice in Wonderland or The Wizard of Oz as well. It's
yeah, I
that
could
kind of
see that.
story of a girl going through conflict, essentially.
Yeah, and both those stories are about like the problems of puberty and changing from a child to an adult. And I think that's a theme that's very present in this story as well. So yeah, it was a good time. Also, like the thing with the way the storytelling works is I think maybe the Japanese writing is generally more direct. Like there's a bit more tell, a little less show, just as a cultural thing. And I can't really bag on them for that. So it's a preference.
I've got an example here of the specific point that when Chihiro gets renamed to Sen halfway through, it's literally called Sen to Chihiro. Sen is another word used for 1,000, as in money. So a major theme of the film is greed. It's implying that money basically takes over her original importance. And the importance is only on money and capitalism in Japanese culture.
Yeah, they literally reduce identity down to her value.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
I'm not making that up, by the way. This actually has academic articles written about this.
Yeah, there's layers like that I've lost just by not speaking the language.
Yeah, which will always happen.
Yeah, I can't say I'm the perfect reviewer for this thing, and you should take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt. I still think it's a fantastic movie, but I'm obviously not picking up on everything the film's putting down.
But yeah, so fantastic movie. Tom isn't clever enough to understand it.
That sounds like most movies.
Yay! That is all for us this week. Well, not totally all. If you do want to keep paying attention to us, you can always find our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, more of it, Podbean, YouTube, Geeks and Gaijins on all of those. Find the podcast, listen to some more. Why not? Show it to a friend. Print out the web page and burn it on a toaster. Don't do that. You're burning your house down.
That would be dangerous and reckless and also pointless, John.
I think you've just summed up this podcast, Thomas.
Oh dear.
You can also, we do stream Twitch. We try to do twice a week playing stupid Japanese games. Because yay, Danganronpa. We finished Danganronpa 2. We're now on our way to the side games and probably will be starting V3 soon. So yay, don't miss that.
And we'd just like to take this time to make a special announcement and thank you all for listening, because we have just surpassed 1,000 listens on this podcast, which is a big milestone for us.
Yeah, 1,000 downloads. That's insane. That's still insane that people listen to us. I love you all for it. I love you all.
For two randoms who are just making this on their free time and are putting basically nothing into marketing it, it's fantastic to have so many people from so many different places tuning in and listening to us ramble about complete nonsense. I mean, we've got people listening from every continent in the world apart from Antarctica, and that's only because I haven't taught these penguins to speak English yet. So we're working on that.
Or Japanese.
I mean, I don't know how that would work, but carry on.
Shout out specifically to Poland and Costa Rica, just because I like your flags.
They look very pretty on our stats page.
Yay.
So thank you everyone who has tuned in, and I hope to see you again soon. We've had a fantastic month last month, and we're hoping that we continue this even further into the future.
To 2000 and beyond, he says.
Anything you'd like to add, John? Anyone you'd like to thank?
I'd like to thank my mother, my father, my agent, the academy, and generally Japan for being such a crazy goddamn place. See you next week, everyone.
The true star of the podcast.
Japan itself. Or was it the Japan we made along the way? Bye, everyone.
It do be like that. Bye, everyone. Thank you for listening.